Hey there, welcome to the channel. So it's summertime, so do you have an abundance of yellow squash in your garden? Or maybe you have family or friends gifting you some because they have so much of it. Let's do something with this. Today, we're gonna make a gluten-free yellow squash casserole. I'm Jamie with SavorySaver. I share gluten-free recipes, tips, tricks, and resources to make your gluten-free lifestyle easier. So please consider hitting subscribe and let's get started. This recipe isn't gonna take much time to put together. So I've got my oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I am cutting the recipe in half because Tara doesn't eat yellow squash typically. So it's just me eating it, so I have cut the recipe in half. This will make 4 to 6 servings. If you do the full recipe, it'll make about 8 servings probably. And I'll give you measurements, but I'm probably not gonna do a whole lot of measuring here. It's cooking. It's a good recipe to just see how well I can do just by watching what I'm putting in. So to start, I've got a 1 quart dish that I've sprayed with cooking spray, or you could use some melted butter, whatever you wanna do, because we're gonna pop it in the oven. Next, I've taken 3 small yellow squash and I just washed them and dried them and then cut them into thin slices. And some I left as circles, some of them I took out the seeds and did them as half moons. You know, a larger squash, you may want to take the seeds out. And if it's smaller, you may not. You know, do what you want to do. Either way will work. That was a bigger piece, so it's actually in a half moon. So once that's all ready, I'm gonna get a small bowl. I've got 1 egg in there. To the egg, I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup of sour cream, maybe a little more. I'm also gonna add some dried minced onions, about 1.5 teaspoons. You could use fresh if you wanted. I'm gonna add some fresh thyme. You could use dried if you didn't have fresh. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the stem and pull backwards. And that's gonna tear off all those thyme leaves. And I'm not even gonna worry about chopping them up. And I'll just break up the stem a little bit because the stems can be tough, but this is thyme that I've gotten from the top of the plant, so it's not even that tough. So that'll just cook with everything else. Next, I'm gonna add some salt and some black pepper. I'm gonna mix this all together. Got that all mixed. I'm gonna add some shredded cheese. I'm using cheddar. I'm using about 1/2 cup, but the full recipe would be about 1 cup. A handful of that in there. Give it another mix. Take our squash, get our mixture poured into that. Give everything a good mix. Let's get this put into our baking dish. Now that everything's in the dish, you can't have a good casserole without some kind of topping. So for the topping, I just took like 1.5 slices of gluten-free bread and pulsed it up in the food processor. You could also use dried gluten-free breadcrumbs if you had those. To that, I'm gonna add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I'm also gonna add a little bit of garlic powder and some fresh parsley. You could also use dried, of course. This will give it a little bit of color since it's not a whole lot of color other than yellow. Let's give everything a mix. Now I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon or so of melted butter. Give everything a really good mix again. Let's get that spread over the top. We've got that all covered. Now we need to bake it for 30 to 35 minutes. You want the top to be lightly golden brown and the cheese should be melted and everything might be bubbling a little bit. So let's get this baked and give it a taste. So here's our gluten-free squash casserole that we used yellow squash for. The breadcrumbs turned out great, nice and golden. The parsley gave it some green as well as the thyme inside the casserole. 30 minutes, it was done to where I like it. So let's give it a taste. Plenty of flavor from the thyme and surprisingly, plenty of garlic taste from that little bit of garlic powder that we added to the breadcrumbs. I really like the Parmesan cheese in there. The cheddar, of course, gives it some more cheesy flavor. The squash, I sliced it really thin with a knife. It still has a little bit of texture to it. It's not mushy. I think this is definitely a good recipe. I think if you baked it an extra 5 minutes, if you want it a little softer, by all means do that. Do you guys have an abundance of yellow squash, or is it coming in now, or do you have friends that are gonna give it to you? I think if you maybe have zucchini instead of yellow squash, I would use that or mix them together. Guys, that's all I have for this video. Please leave me any comments below. I wanna thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.